Welcome to Nittany Nation Overtime.
Hello, and welcome to our first Nittany Nation Overtime of the year. We obviously have a new set to celebrate our 25 years. So while we have some new things, we of course have our two OG nitwits, Mark Brennan and Neil Riddell. I'm your host, Anderly Conwell, and we are joined by Joe Nastasi, our guest. I'm so excited for this second year. Guys, welcome back. It's been a couple months since we've been back on set.
Thank you.
Great to be here. You say OG, two old guys, huh?
Yeah, and they're trying to put us together, like next to
I
each
know.
other. This could
Yeah.
get dangerous.
This could
be.
get-
Feel the love.
This could.
Yeah, it's good.
We might have to break up some fights during this whole show. But Penn State football right around the corner, so let's get right into it. Season predictions. Mark, you want to start us off? What do you think the Nittany Lions are going to do this year?
Listen, they lost 6 of 8 to end last year. I don't think anybody was really happy with the way that kind of unfolded. To me, I think you look at a healthy Sean Clifford coming back. I think you look at a more legitimate running game. Kevon Lee will do some good things, but I think Nick Singleton's going to be really big. And then defensively, some issues at linebacker, but they are stout up front and really good on the back end. So I think this team's going to bounce back, and I'm looking at 9-3.
Okay, I'm going to say 8-4. I'd like to be a little bit more optimistic. I do think you can make a case when Clifford was healthy, when P.J. Mustipher was healthy early last year, things were going, they were rolling. But I look at a cumulative 2-year thing. I mean, they've become about a 500 program in their last 25 games. And I think there's a lot of holes that really need to be addressed, and I'm anxious to see, how well they're addressing them. They have new players in some spots. You're looking for a middle linebacker. You got a new defensive coordinator. The offensive line always seems to be in some question or state of repair. So I think those are the main things and plus they need a punter. Jordan Stout's already doing great for the Ravens.
No kidding. And Joe, last year you picked undefeated. Are you going to go with that again?
Well, hey, that's been the last 3 years running. But when I look at this year, these guys kind of hit it on the head. With what happened last year and the direction they went last year on the back half of the season, a lot of factors involved there. One of the things I like this year about where we're going with it, and I haven't given my number yet, but where we're going, this year.
Do you have is there a loss?
So where we're going this year, here's the way I see it. I see a 10-2 season. I did this before. I see a 10-2. What I see is one they shouldn't and one that you're kind of expecting. So when I see it that way, I think the running game is really going to help us this year. It's going to help our defense out. We had a non-existent run game last year. This year is going to be totally different. So I like us at a 10-2 just based on us being able to run the football better.
You've broken your streak.
Well, the year we went 10-2 was the Rose Bowl year, so let's do it again.
So my initial gut thought was the 9-3, but then there's going to be, I hate to be a pessimist, but there's going to be one. We had the flu game that somehow came out last year, and then there was, that overtime disaster crisis against Illinois. So I think there's going to be one that drops, but we will have more when we come back. We're going to take a look at some of the vital positions for the Nittany Lions this year across the board. Don't go anywhere. You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime. We are the Nitwits. So guys, let's just get right into it. Penn State, of course, linebacker you. Who are some of the guys to look out for, Mark, with some of the depth charts?
Yeah, I mean, obviously Curtis Jacobs is a guy who's played a lot of football for them. They moved him from the Sam into one of those box positions, the will position, but all eyes are on middle linebacker. I mean, you lost a guy in Ellis Brooks who played really well for them last year. Yeah. So there's two guys, Tyler Elsdon, who's been in the program a couple years, and then a second-year guy, Kobe King, the twin brother of Kalen King. Both of those guys are fighting for that Mike linebacker position. Manny Diaz has said it's a very close competition. Sounds like Elsdon's a little bit ahead. I think both of those guys have the ability to be solid Mike linebackers moving forward. But I also think they're very fortunate that they have, again, a really good defensive line, and they have a really good back end that are going to allow both of those guys to kind of learn. But the one thing to watch out for, if they get banged up at linebacker, there could be some issues.
Well,
yeah.
Excuse me. I mean, the middle linebacker's got to call the plays too.
Yeah,
right?
well, that's what I'm saying.
So,
Quarterback
so he's not only going to make plays; he's got to get everybody organized. So I think that is one of the biggest question marks on the team. And I know they're high on the defensive front, but you got two guys that are coming off season-ending injuries last year. The two guys you're most high on with PJ and Isaac.
And lost so many to the draft too, high-quality players to that draft.
Yeah, but you're also bringing back Akeem Beeman, who didn't play last year
Right.
for unknown reasons. He's a baller. The guy can get after it, and you're bringing in Chop Robinson from Maryland, who's a defensive end who can really get after it. So I would not sleep on his defensive line.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be big time.
I think they always reload. I mean, the coaching staff does a good job with that, so I don't think you're really going to miss that much on defense. I think guys will just keep getting better. I do see what you're saying here and understand from a depth perspective on linebacker. I mean, that's going to be a position that's going to have to stay healthy. On the back end, I really like what we have back there. I mean, I think our safeties, we replacing them, stayed high guy. Keaton Ellis is going to be back there. You got him. Porter, I love his game at corner. Just a long corner can really make things happen. I think defensively we're not going to miss a beat there. I think we've got to stay healthy in the middle, but I think that's going to be, again, another strength of this Penn State team.
And then on the other side of the ball, a lot of conversations we had on this show last year revolved around the guys up front on the offensive line. There's a lot to unpack with that. So where do we want to start with the O-line?
Well, they keep kind of, some pieces that, they've lost. They've moved Scruggs. They have some guys that they're counting on, Wallace. So those are the two guys experience-wise that I think you're going to build around. And they have to show confidence in the offensive line. They haven't always done that. Last year against Michigan, you're down at the 1, you want to fake a field goal. Seriously. And so maybe they need to show a little more confidence. James talks about wanting to run the ball. I think we'll see if the play calling reflects that.
Two things that aren't personnel related with the offensive line directly, but I think if you look at last season, through 5 games, they're 5-0. Sean Clifford was able to move around some. He's never going to be Michael Vick, but he did enough to keep opposing. Yeah, he did enough to keep opposing defenses honest. And I think if he's able to do that, and they would be more comfortable because I think they're more comfortable with his backups this year, I think that helps. And number two, listen, the one thing that they really lacked last year, and this hurt the offensive line, was a breakaway threat running back. I mean, it wasn't just guys not going 70 yards like Saquon. They weren't having guys go 20, 25 yards. So they would get to that second level and get tracked down, and that's where I think you keep your eye on Nick Singleton because he could make this offensive line look a lot better. He's a true freshman, 215, 220-pounder, but has tremendous speed. He's their best breakaway running back since Journey Brown.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And, I was always told when I was playing, you can always take a one-dimensional offense away. You can always shut that down. So, and you could see that. You could see that in all levels. If you got a one-dimensional team, and that's what we became last year, and it was easier for teams to contain. It's made it more difficult to do everything just because of the way we were set up. And I think, like what you guys were talking about with Clifford being able to move, being more healthy, that's going to affect the rest of the team, and it's going to make us a better running football team as well.
Lee averaged close to 6 yards a carry. I think he was better than he might have been given an opportunity. They were still running by committee. The more times, and Clifford has had some big runs at times, last couple years, 3 years really. But the more times he runs, the more vulnerable he is, and the less carries for your running game.
I think you're looking at different stats than I am because I think Lee was like 4.9 yards per carry, and he only had 2 rushing touchdowns. You did not have a breakaway threat.
I know he's not a breakaway threat, but
but you need one.
Okay, well, I think if you get a guy averaging 5 yards a carry, that's a lot better than the guys that were getting more carries than him.
And also replacing Jordan Stout. I mean, punters are people too, in the wise words of Pat McAfee. So, Stout was an absolute weapon, an asset on that special teams. What's that situation looking like this year? And do we need to be as concerned in terms of replacing an NFL punter that you had last year?
Yeah, you definitely have to be concerned. I would be, the way I think this plays out, they have a transfer from Colgate who didn't play last year because he was behind Jordan Stout. But Barney Amore is the guy who I think is going to be their punter this season. I think Alex Paqueta, the kid from Georgia, another great punter from Georgia, true freshman, I think they give him a year to redshirt and let Barney Moore handle the punting. But Barney Moore is a guy who averaged over 42, 43 yards per punt at Colgate. What I would say is it's a lot different punting at Colgate before 80,000 fans for the entire season than it is punting at Purdue, at Auburn, at some of these places that you're going to be going.
Yeah, they got to be consistent. I mean, and they definitely are. They can change a game when they flip fields like that. I mean, it really helps your defense. But a consistent punter, and that's what Stout was last year. He was consistent. Obviously, he could kick it a long way, but he was very consistent. That's what you need out of a guy like that. He's definitely a weapon, definitely.
All right, when we come back, we'll take a deeper look at some of the other players, including all of the quarterbacks. Don't go anywhere.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Welcome back to the first Nittany Nation Overtime of the year. So we'll just get right into another electric player, a transfer coming in from Western Kentucky, Mitchell Tinsley. Now, he had quite the 2021 season last year. We have some stats of him if we can get those pulled up. He was like 7th in the NCAA in receptions. He had 1,200 yards, almost 1,300. He had 16.2 yards per reception. He was tied for 6th in the nation with 12 touchdowns, 80 receptions. Now, you bring in a guy like Tinsley to replace someone like Dotson. Neil, what are you seeing so far of Tinsley, or what are your thoughts on him?
The receiver, and we have a new director named Parker, and they also have Parker Washington. But Tinsley, there's a lot of hopes for Tinsley. But hey, he had a pro quarterback playing with him at Western Kentucky, and they were, as you would say, Joey, slinging it all over the place.
Yep.
So that was a factor. That kid went in the 4th round of the Patriots. So let's see. They're going to try to get him the ball, and he looks like has a lot of potential.
Do you think he's a direct replacement for Dotson?
I'm sorry?
Do you think he's a direct replacement for Dotson?
I like the fact that he took his number and didn't even, he's like, no, this is a number I've always had. So I think there's a level of confidence, but no, you're not going to be a direct replacement for the highest Penn State receiver draft pick ever, but he's played a lot of football. Now, albeit, Neil, you talk about, playing at Western Kentucky, they led the NCAA in passing yards, weren't very high in rushing yards. So it was very skewed towards throwing the ball. But this kid played well against Michigan State. He played well against Indiana, played very well against App State in their bowl game. He's been on the big stage. This is not going to be new for him. And I think the other thing that we saw in the blue-white game, caught a pass, ran in for a touchdown. Joe, you could speak to that. It's more than just catching the ball. He can catch it. He knows how to get to the end zone.
Yeah. I mean, we talk about like the big stage and things like that. I mean, I think I don't want to say it's overrated, but you get a guy, skill is skill. The field is the same. They play in the same kind of field. The lights are a little bright at times, but someone like that's seasoned. What is he, a senior this year? You got a guy like that. I don't think you got a direct replacement, but now you got a guy to plug a spot now. And when I say plug a spot, I don't mean that in a way of just fill in, but is he going to be Dotson? Hey, only time is going to tell, and we'll see how he plays out there. And it's game to game, and we'll see what he could do. I mean, he looks like he has a similar body type that Dotson did, but I'll be excited to see it. You got Washington in the slot there. I think we're going to be fine out there.
So we talked a little bit about the quarterback, the guys in charge of getting Tinsley the ball there, though. We welcome back Sean Clifford he's been there since the dawn of time, it seems like, at this point. We have some more stats on him. He actually came to college when I was still in college, which makes me feel really old. That's one other thing. So Clifford's back for year infinity at this point, maybe. He's really high up in all of those other stats here. He's a 4-year starter, 7,000 plus career passing yards. He's 3rd all-time at Penn State. He's 2nd in passing touchdowns at Penn State, and he currently is the completion percentage leader at a little over 60%. So what do you guys expect from Clifford this year?
Well, he's going to end up with a lot of longevity records. I mean, and he gives them stability. I'm curious to see what happens as the season unfolds, what the progression may be. James made some interesting comments at Media Day. He talked about coaching, not coaching with ego, to get another drive for the offense when you're up 38-6 against Villanova, or keeping the defense out there to preserve a shutout. So I think some of that translates to they want to get Vayu in there. They may want to get to a freshman or quarterback or two as the season wears on, just to see, because you can play in a few games before you lose a red shirt. So I think that's one of the things that we're going to be keeping an eye on, especially if they lose a game or so along the way.
So Vayu's the number 2, and Allard Pribula kind of going back and forth for the number 3 spot. Mark, You're talking about Aller in the break. What do you see from him, and what do you think makes him special?
Yeah, I mean, you've been at practice. I mean, he can spin the ball. I mean, he has an arm that's just absolutely ridiculous.
And he's built too.
Yeah, but I would say both of those kids, they were able to come in January, so they're both early enrollees,
Right.
Aller and Prabula. And the other thing, they're both able to learn from Clifford. So having Clifford back was huge for them, and Vayu, who spent a year under Yursic's system. So I think that, getting back to Clifford, I do think there's something to be said for him having the luxury of being a starter underneath the same offensive coordinator for the second year in a row for the first time. They have had musical offensive coordinators. Let's see how that works. I think he also has to stay healthy. If he stays healthy, I think he'll be fine. But the key to quarterback this year is they are much more comfortable with the guys they have at second, third, and then obviously fourth team than they were last year. And we saw what happened with Taquan Roberson, Joe. We talk about guys sometimes aren't ready for the big stage. He just wasn't. And again, Vayu coming off a senior season in high school last year where he didn't even play because of COVID. Now you have Vayu with Big Ten game experience against Rutgers. You have two young guys who were able to learn under the veterans. I think it's a much better situation.
Could you imagine what you could have done if you would have enrolled in January? I mean,
Not
seriously.
only that, or if they would have thrown it more than 3 times a game. But I mean, you can't discount the experience. So you like that, and then the second part of that is the depth of the quarterback position now, just like what you were talking about. So now you're going to be able to do a couple of different things because you're not in protect mode. So again, we'll be able to move them a little bit. Hey, look, you're not out there to be reckless, but at the same time, now your depth is going to be important on how you call plays based on what your quarterbacks can do.
Now, if you were dropped into this 2022 Penn State roster, what's that dynamic? I know. What do you think that
Wouldn't have made the
dynamic?
team.
First the NIL deal that he would put
Oh,
together.
I would
fantastic
have
NIL
started
deal.
with,
But what part of that relationship with Clifford going into that second year do you think would be valuable with the receivers?
Well, like I said, the experience, because you're gonna understand each other. When you have different quarterbacks, different coordinators, everything changes. Verbiage changes. What the guys see changes. When you're with the same quarterback or the same OC, you obviously are going to see things the same way. It's going to really help out. And I think that, with him having, what you said, 2 years in a row with the same coordinator is going to be like night and day between what they did last year. Because, hey, look, coming in January, there's a lot going on from January to the start of the season. So this is going to help him out. It's going to help the whole team out offensively as well.
All right, great. And when we come back, we got our Purdue picks. Don't go anywhere.
You're watching Nittany Nation Overtime.
Well, welcome back to Nittany Nation Overtime. Here's a quick look at the Nittany Lions schedule. Of course, Purdue coming up this Thursday, then at home for the home opener against Ohio, the 1-1 with Auburn from last year's whiteout, then a bit of turns into the Midwest, Central Michigan, and then the Big Ten home opener against Northwestern on the road at Michigan, whiteout against Minnesota, Ohio State at home, then Indiana, Maryland, Rutgers, and Michigan State for the second year in a row rounds out that Thanksgiving time. So very excited to get into football. Best part of the show, of course, is the picks.
Ladies first.
And what are the year first?
Yeah.
There you go.
Mm-hmm.
So I think, the matchup this year against Purdue is going to be good. I think Penn State's going to win 27-17 on the road and get off to a nice hot start on a weird Thursday night game. So who's up next?
Well, I'll go. I want to pick Penn State. I honestly do, especially the season opener. But out there at night, I think Penn State has a lot of questions they have to answer, and I'm anxious to see if they can answer them. Purdue has a veteran quarterback. They put 40 on the boards a number of times last year, Michigan State, Tennessee, late in the year. Penn State has not really proven they can score 30 in a Big Ten game. They did it against Maryland with defensive touchdown. I'm going to say Purdue 32, Penn State 26.
Nice. Well, I'll go next and let our guest pick last.
That's right.
Listen, Penn State, when healthy last year, and I know that's a caveat, actually went out and won the season opener, at Wisconsin, which to me was a much bigger challenge than this would be. I think if you look at this Purdue team that has, it too has an 8th-year quarterback, but lost some of the really good receivers, including David Bell from last year. So I think that this defense for Penn State, we keep talking about the pass rush, the secondary. I think it matches up really well. I think the offense comes along, and I'll look for Penn State to win it 24-20.
And Joe?
So I'm looking at it like this. You know, if we came into this game ranked in the top 10, I'm hating this Thursday night game coming up. I really am, because they're giant killers out there. We're coming in unranked. Expectations are different. Not that that really matters in the locker room so much, but, you know, again, now you have a team that has pretty much saying everything to prove, a staff that says we got everything to prove. They're going to come out hungry. I think there's going to be a ton of turnovers from the Purdue side of the ball. I think Penn State's going to go out there and really impose their will. I like a 38-16 ball game. Penn State.
Great. All right, and we are almost out of time here on Nittany Nation Overtime, but we do have some exciting news. We will be turning these shows into podcasts. You can scan that QR code. It'll take you to the Nittany Nation app, which everyone should, of course, download on the Android and app stores. So if you can scan that, we'll be dropping these shows in podcast form, which is a cool little feature that we're going to be doing this year, so you can stay connected with us. And I'm excited for year 25. Joe, thank you for joining us. As always, Neil and Mark, thank you. And to you guys, thank you so much for watching. Have a great day.